Good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is for you right now. Welcome to the link, our special World AIDS Day episode. And as you can see, my co-host and I were all wearing our red. I even went out and bought some flowers. Hi, co-host. What's going on with you guys? I'm Ty. I'm Ty. I am our legal secure specialist. I'm going to let everyone else introduce themselves as well.
I'm
What's going on,
Rogelio.
everybody? It's your boy Daniel J. I am the prevention training specialist for Swab and Chill.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kai. I'm prevention. I'm a coordinator for APLA Health for the Healthy Him program.
And I'm Rogelio, your prevention training specialist for Trans Connections.
And might I say, y'all all look very, very good wearing your red. Now, usually, you all know, we would have had an event that was catered with live performances. Our Shades of Red Gala that we did for 2 straight years in a row. Daniel performed. Last year, Kai got an award. Rogelio was there looking amazing. But as you guys know, due to COVID-19, we can't have that event. So we decided to bring the Shades of Red Gala to the show today. Like I said, everybody's wearing the red. And it's a very important day for us in the field because we work to fight against HIV. So now we have a day where we can actually recognize not only the people that have passed from HIV or complications with AIDS, but also the advancements that we've made, within the field. So it's a bittersweet day. We mourn those that we've lost, and then we also discuss and speak and celebrate the advancements that we've had. So yeah, I am excited for today. I will tell you guys this. I did wake up. It didn't feel like a regular World AIDS Day. Dante posted our video today of all of us speaking about how important it is to continue to do the work that we do. And I was touched. And y'all know how I am. I'm very cold. I was touched. I almost shed a small tear. I was like, oh, look at us. Oh, look at us. But yeah.
You got it with the
Everybody's
corner of that handkerchief, like Candace
Just
Dillard.
it was the side of the bow tie. I just took it in my
Very
hand.
Candace from Housewives of
Yes.
Potomac.
Real, yeah, like
Just dab dab.
real Monique. I did it, but I wasn't sorry about it. So
I
like
hate
you
you.
all watching, today, I get my news based off of my coworkers and what we see online. So we're going to go into our segment called "What's Poppin'," and I believe Daniel, you had something very, very interesting to discuss today, huh?
Well, news broke this morning, at least on my timeline, in regards to an actor that is out in the field. If you've ever seen Netflix Umbrella Academy,
Mm-hmm.
the what we used to know as what is her
Ellen Page.
name? Ellen
Ellen.
Page, who plays the little violin individual on Umbrella Academy. He came out as trans, has said that, he is now Elliot Page. He is no longer Ellen Page. And there's been a lot of talks on some of the blogs and some of the social media realms about how this affects his career. How does this affect, this possible season 3 of Umbrella Academy? And will Elliot no longer play cisgender roles? And so my personal thought about it is I'm here for it. Obviously, live your truth, live in your discovery and who you are. But I also feel like, as far as being an actor, if the Umbrella Academy, the show, if they decide in season 3 to rework his character, they have a
Mm-hmm.
lot to play with in regards to making the storyline interesting. Being that it
Okay.
is, kind of like a supernatural show, superpowers and there's all kinds of realms and things that you could do to make that fit into the story. But the other side of me feels like if Elliot decided to continue to play the character as it is, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. After all, he is an actor. And of course, the question was, well, it's problematic for cis people to play trans. Why would trans people have to play cis? And so
Okay.
my response to that is a cis person playing a trans person, a cis person never has ever in their life had a trans experience. Most
Right.
trans individuals at some point in their life have lived and have had a cis experience. So for a trans person
Agreed.
to play cis, they can. They know what that experience is like on some level. A cis person playing a trans person is just dumb. Like you have You have no reference point on any scale
Right.
to
Yeah.
be able to portray a trans experience that you never even in your life have ever
Right.
experienced.
And like
Yeah.
just personally as a trans person, I feel like my thoughts on it are a little complicated because I also, totally agree that the double standard is there for a reason. Cis people should not necessarily play trans characters just because trans people rarely get the opportunity. I do think that, there are some exceptions. I think there are some, actors that have done really well playing a trans character. And I feel like acting it comes with the role of having to, adapt yourself. So I don't want to make it like black and white. I'm sure it can happen, but just in the point we are now where we're trying to get more representation, it makes a lot more sense to have trans people play other trans people. And I think with the character Vanya, which is the name of Elliot's character on
Thank
Umbrella
you, because I could
Academy.
not think of her name.
No, yeah, it's
I
a
was like,
little
what's her
Russian.
name? I don't remember
Right.
any of their names. I know what they look like.
No, but what I appreciate about the show is that they've kind of incorporated things about Elliot himself before this point. So, like in the original magazines, I'm pretty sure Vanya wasn't queer. But in season 2 of Umbrella Academy, it gets real queer. I mean, I don't know if y'all have all seen it, but
Spoiler
the fact that
alert.
the fact that they incorporated that aspect of his personal experience makes me think, oh well, maybe if he wishes and if the show is interested, they'll also incorporate a trans storyline into the 3rd season, because the queer storyline wasn't really part of the original comic. So I'm thinking it could go either way, but I think if Elliot wants to continue playing the character, that at the end of the day he's an actor, so that's what actors do. So I really think that it's completely up to him and people making a big deal out of it instead of just celebrating, a new addition to the family, at least from my perspective. Then, I think it loses the point. I think his point about, if you guys read his statement about, that fear of wanting to come out because of the ridicule, because of the jokes that he thinks he might experience, because of how he thinks this is going to limit him in the future. I think we should really focus on that instead of like, what is he going to play next? Because, I think he's definitely proven himself as an actor at this point, so he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
I completely. Yeah, go ahead, Kai.
I agree. Looking at Elliot's statement, because I read it this morning as well. Elliot made this comment about, this is the time for celebration, but it's so fragile for him. And it hit me that this has to be a shared experience for a lot of trans people when they can accept their truth and be comfortable enough to call and state who they are to people. The fear that must come along with it and the fragility of it all for people to negate it or to even joke about it. And I think that's one of the real important things that I feel like Elliot has tried to express, is that like, this is a sensitive and private time right now, but I'm happy with who I am and I want to share that, but also recognize, because Elliot also talked about, all the trans people who have been murdered, and especially the Black and brown trans people, like took that time, like this is a platform. They're using their platform in a way that is appropriate. As for their acting, I think Elliot is a wonderful actor in their own right. Obviously early works, we saw them in Juno, and which is such a strange, like if you really think about like past the idea of a teenage pregnant woman, and then now coming out as trans, as a trans man, I think they're an actor. They're able to do that. Even if they didn't feel that experience, if they can portray that, then let their acting ability speak for themselves. Now, when we talk about cis people playing trans people, it's one of those things. There are so many other people that they could go to before they could find a cis person to play a trans person. We know.
I was just about to say that, and I agree 100%. Rogelio made a really, really good point. We just had Trans Day of Remembrance, and we were talking about the recognition and the attention that the trans community is getting now. We need to shift these conversations into why do people who come out as trans feel like it could be detrimental to their career? What are we doing as a society to not make that space safe for them? I think that that's probably the most growth that we can have in regards to that. Congrats to Elliot for even wanting to come out and share that, because I also don't believe that you need to tell everybody your business either. So it's kind of like, and I'm an extremely private person. It's always one of those things where it's like you let people that's a privilege for people to get to know that portion of you. And I agree. I think that, ultimately this won't limit their career. This will probably even get them more recognized anyway. We need to be, open to seeing more roles and more roles played by trans individuals.
Right.
And
I just hope
I
it
think one
doesn't
of the
close
things-
him. into like a
I was just gonna
box.
say that's what I was gonna say. My thing is, I definitely agree and root and advocate for trans representation in the industry. Period. You know, in music, in
Hmm.
acting, in all kinds of different fields. But with acting specifically, I don't want the industry to be performative in the way where it's like the only role that we're going to hire you to play is a trans
Right.
experience role,
Exactly.
and it's like
Mhm.
Exactly.
I'm an actor. Let's start there. I'm an actor,
Yeah.
and I can play a lot of different experiences. But if you are going to portray someone who is trans on film or on TV, then it should go to those who have not had the opportunity to get the job when they have the experience
Hmm.
behind it.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. And one thing that I kind of want to talk about, just because it has trans identity related to, so it's a little bit of a sidestep. Not that we don't love Elliot, but when we talk about
Little soft shoe.
visibility, it's still, once again, trans people are not being seen. Did we know Laverne Cox was attacked in LA?
I
I heard
just
about
saw
that.
that.
Yeah.
It did make major news, but a major trans actor, one of the lead advocates and trans voices in the country right now, was attacked here in LA. And so many people don't know because no one wants to report about it. And that's just another example, especially coming off of Trans Day of Remembrance. Like, we saw everyone being so performative and like, yes, uplift trans voices, but when trans violence still happens, especially for someone who has a human,
Quiet.
they
Hmm.
quiet crickets. So it's one of those things. And so for me, obviously, there's intersectionality with everybody. So Elliot coming out as trans is wonderful, but
Hmm.
it's almost a question of like, so we're really supporting this trans white person, but a black trans woman who we know historically, those are the people being killed. And even in Elliot's statement, he made that statement that black trans women and Latinx trans women are the most
Yeah.
affected. It
Yeah.
happened, and so many people are silent. So for me, it's kind of like it's great, but it's also like there's still so much going on. There's such a bigger problem that still needs to be talked about. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My only hope is that he continues to use his privilege in that way, like recognizing that he is going to be a lot more visible, not only as a man, as a trans man, but also as a white trans man with the platform that he has had. So I think as long as he continues to use his voice appropriately, then my hopes are pretty good because I've been a fan of Elliot for a long time now. So seeing them come out as trans has just like really touched my heart, especially. So we've had a lot of great coming out stories this year, so it's been really nice.
Shout
But
out to
with
all
that,
those
can we
coming
move
out
on to
for
something a
deal.
little more messy?
Yes,
Because I
let's
have
get
thoughts.
messy.
Because I
Come
have
on, man.
thoughts. I have thoughts on this Summer Walker baby mama drama because she
Oh
now
God.
is, at odds with her man, London on the Track, when she has spent a lot of her time talking about other baby mamas. She was talking about, it shouldn't cost that much to feed a baby. You could just give him a pear for dinner, So what is everybody's thoughts about this? Because, I love Summer Walker, of course, her music, her voice, amazing. But she does seem to get into a lot of this mess on social media and kind of,
So
puts her foot in her
I'm
mouth.
gonna
Well, you're gonna have
I'm
to
gonna answer
educate
you.
me because I don't follow the Whisper Singer. So I know
So
that she had a nose job, and that's about it.
Summer Walker is pregnant by her boyfriend. We got London on the track.
I
So
can't. I'm not even.
so she's been making these comments towards baby moms, baby mamas, just in general about how they should either raise their child or how they conduct themselves, when it comes to their personal life and everyday life. And the other day, she went on a story rant on IG and said that this whole situation is ghetto. People don't want to take care of their kids. And she called out London on the track, but she also called out his baby mom as well. I'm not going to make an excuse for Summer Walker. I do think that sometimes the artists that we enjoy when they are that young, they say a lot of things that are less than smart. And I think that this might have been one of those less than smart moments with the hormones and stuff going on with her being pregnant. She probably just blurted out a whole bunch of things that made absolutely no sense. This is very different than the HIV comment that she made. Just throwing that out there.
Okay, so with that, just with that info alone, let me say this: you are new. You haven't even been a baby mama yet. You're
Oh, put the
pregnant. You don't
hand
even.
down.
You know, with the pearls on it, honey. So clutch them. If you got pearls on, clutch them. You're
I touched my
pregnant.
bow tie.
You haven't had the opportunity in full to be a mother yet. You are getting ready to be full-time mom to another human being outside of your body. And I think it's a bit disgusting that you can come for baby moms and have such a blanketed opinion about who does and doesn't raise their kids or how they should raise their kids because you don't know. And the reality is when your kid does come out of your body, your kid is moving into a privilege that most people do not have, whether they are single mothers, two-parent household mothers, whether they're a baby mama, whether they're a baby father, whether it's a single father. Like you don't necessarily have that experience to tell somebody else this is how you need to raise your child, because your child is not gonna necessarily live in that struggle, if that makes sense.
I agree.
I agree. I know we all have opinions about it. Like a subject comes up, yes, we have an opinion about it. That's fine. But I think that these younger artists need to understand that your platform speaks volumes, and what you say on those platforms and how you say it on those platforms. A simple "I'm sorry" don't cut it. And the excuse about them being young, I give no damns about, because I too was young, and even though we didn't have social media, and Ty, I can speak to you very direct. We didn't have social media in our day like
We
that.
did not.
And there's a lot of
did not.
information about our lives and our past that is not out there for the world to see. So
Very true, and it's still there.
Summer whisper. Check yourself, boo boo. Check yourself.
Right. I mean, it just seems like karma.
BABY. Okay.
It just seems like karma because, well, like I heard a commentator say recently, like, well, a lot of people who talk bad about baby mamas end up becoming them. So
the fact that
she's now all out, on the fritz with her man when she was saying all this, you don't need that much money to support your child, all these women, asking for all this child support, and, just all the comments that she's made in the past is just kind of like, well, now you can't really expect people to have sympathy for you.
It's definitely a
Hi, Eric in the background.
Hey, Eric. Kai, your opinion?
It's live television, so I know that the people are seeing it. They're like,
right.
That? We want to say hi.
My opinion on it is this is one of those instances where people don't need to know that much about your life. And this might be a me thing just because, I have boundaries. So I only allow a certain amount of information on social media at any point in time. This seems like one of those things. Someone was upset. Summer was just super upset, and she wanted to say something. She wanted to do whatever she could to make London on the Track or whoever feel as bad as she did. Is it right?
His whole name the entire time. Like his name is London on the Track.
We're gonna say all. We're gonna say a whole
thing.
Like a Tribe Called
His name is a phrase.
Yep.
Okay.
Ooh. But
we can't just call him London. Okay.
Nah.
Oh, thanks for loving our outfits. We did it special.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks, Bo.
Ultimately, for me, it is one of those things. Me, I don't have kids. I don't have baby mama drama, so I can't really speak to that experience. But I can speak to, it's not a cute look. It's messy, and I know the world is messy and people are messy. But this feels like something that should have been a phone call to London, and that phone call didn't text your mom or something. Because now you're going to get into the same instance, kind of like what happened with Cardi B. How Cardi B was so upfront about her and Quavo's things, and all people were telling her to leave Quavo, and she's like, "That's my man, I love him." And then people were mad at her. Was mad that people were mad at her, and it's like, "Well, girl, you're in a toxic situation, and we told you so, and you're not doing it now. So what?
Save it for the Finsta, like."
Come on, Finsta, because she has one. Moral of the story. Do not post your personal ideas in that situation or in any kind of situation on social media for the world to see. We are about to play a commercial and we will be right back. Okay?
Period.
Hey guys, Ty here from APLA Health, and I got some good news for you.
APLA Health is launching our first ever at-home HIV testing initiative.
as we battle the global pandemic of COVID-19 and all that it entails.
APLA Health is doing what we can to fill the gaps for those who are in need of knowing their status, linking to care, and having safer sex options.
The initiative, officially known as Swab and Chill, will be our virtual hub for those seeking to take an HIV test, receive HIV kits, link into medical care for those who are HIV positive, while also having access to several other programs and services that specialize in harm reduction for HIV infection.
Such services include PrEP and PEP information, as well as substance abuse services. Our goal with Swab and Chill is to make HIV testing easily accessible and easy to use within the comfort of your own home.
We provide each client with the Aura Quick at-home testing kit. This kit is a simple test that is done by orally swabbing the gums and waiting 20 minutes for your results.
APLA staff is available to virtually assist you while taking the test, while providing resources and support for those who may test positive.
Maybe you already know your status and you're just low on condoms and lube due to accessibility. No problem. We can also send you one of our safer sex kits right to your front door.
As we strive to keep our community safer and well informed, your privacy is also a high priority.
All packaging will appear from APLA Health. Our over-the-phone assessments are quick, easy, and secure, so you can feel safe in sharing your results with us and asking any questions that you may have.
If you or someone that you know is interested in having one of our at-home testing kits mailed to you, or you just want more information on what Swab and Chill can provide, please call one of our team members at 323-329-9713, or just email us.
Come swab and chill with 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 us.
And we are back. That
Yeah.
commercial still gives me the feels when I see Rogelio go, "Come swab and chill
Come
with
swab
us."
and chill with us.
Every time you do it, Rogelio, on there, I always do it with you, but you can't see me because I'm backstage when it happens. But I enjoy that. So yes, Daniel, can you go over Swab and Chill for the audience in case they have been hiding under a rock or don't have good internet connection?
And didn't see all of that commercial. So Swab and Chill is our at-home HIV testing initiative where we provide HIV testing to you right at your home. Okay, we put the power of safer sex and knowing your status right in the palm of your hand. So if you're interested in receiving an HIV test to your home, all you have to do is email swabandchill@apla.org, or you can hit us up at 323-329-9713. You'll go through a less than 5-minute assessment. We'll get your mailing address, put your kit together, and ship it out at no cost to you. So again, you can hit us up at 323-329-9713, or you can hit us up at swabandchill, SWABANDCHILL @apla.org.
Thank you. So before we get into today's main topic, I'd like for you all to join us in a 15-second moment of silence for all that we have lost due to HIV and AIDS complications. In honor of World AIDS Day, we always do this, so please join us for that. Thank you so much for that. So, our main topic today, in honor of World AIDS Day, we're going to discuss our first experiences learning about HIV and AIDS and whether or not there was abundance of knowledge or whether it kind of was a touch and go subject, and how we navigated those conversations with the little bit or a lot of information that we were given. So, we're going to get a little personal today. I hope you guys don't mind. So, I wanted to start. So I'm from Philadelphia, originally born and raised like Will Smith. And sex wasn't a conversation in my household. So if heterosexual sex or whatever that is wasn't acknowledged in my household, gay sex definitely wasn't a topic. So having conversations about STDs and all that good stuff was like non-existent. Like my mother, love you to death, Tanisha. My mother grabbed a Birds and the Bees book and kind of like me and my brother were kind of just sitting on the chair one day watching cartoons. And she grabs this book and she goes, here. And she walks away. I said, the nerve. So I I open this book and I'm seeing private parts and whatnot in it. And I'm like, okay, I already know what this stuff is. There was no explanation or no further education on, how to properly put on a condom. Consent, that's big. HIV, AIDS, any other kind of STD, there was really no kind of conversation about it. So I didn't really learn about HIV and AIDS until, I'm embarrassed to say, my second year in college was when I kind of buckled down and kind of looked into it. And at that point, I had been tested probably like twice at that point, negative result. And at that point, and then it kind of was just like one of those things where, I don't know, I was not forced to like ask questions, but I was with a partner who was very, very big in the gay scene. We were always in the gay neighborhood downtown in Philadelphia. Rogelio know what I'm talking about. Walnut Street. Yeah, we was always at Walnut Street, sis. And we never, I never really worked up the courage to ask questions. I felt like it was something I should have known, right? But I finally worked up the courage to ask him a couple questions, and he had already taken me to my first 2 HIV tests. And I was like, okay, cool. I had the little pamphlets and stuff, but I'm like, I'm 22. What am I doing reading a pamphlet about this? So I was a little ignorant at the same time. Right. I was a little ignorant at the same time, and then still wanting to learn about it because, people kept saying, Black and brown communities are the most affected by HIV. So I was like, well, I'm Black, so technically I would fall in that category. So I wound up working up the courage to ask him a couple questions as it pertains to HIV. And he's like, I got the perfect thing for you. Come this Friday, we're going to go down to Children's Hospital. I'm doing a workshop. Just come down, have a conversation, sit amongst, the guys that have the same questions as you, and then, see how you feel afterwards. When I tell y'all, I went to that group and I was the only one talking. Like, no one else said anything. And I'm like, I'm asking all of I don't believe that there's such thing as a dumb question, but this is a dumb question. So if you've ever asked this question, you are dumb. I was like, can you get it if you sneeze? Can you get it if your tear ducts drip? If I cry on somebody, would it be it was just this big thing to me. I was like, okay, I'm learning, but still asking all of these questions and whatnot. So long story short, our producer is messaging us off to the side I am screaming. Yes, that is not a question that you should ask anymore. It's 2020.
First of all, to be very clear, anybody who has ever said there is no such thing as a dumb question is probably the person asking dumb questions. As a person who used to be an educator to children and teens, there are definitely dumb questions. You just really need to think critically before you ask them. Just put that out there.
I asked every single dumb question that was possible in that group. And, learning more about it kind of put me in a predicament where it was I could spend the rest of my life not fully understanding it, but knowing how to prepare myself for sex or, learning how to have conversations about safe sex, or I could do something about it. And I wound up being really, really inspired by the gentleman who took me to the group. And it became my 9 to 5, doing linkage to care now. It's kind of, people say all the time, how do you feel, being the one to kind of navigate someone through a positive diagnosis? And I got to admit, the first couple of times, and you guys all know, the first couple of times are a little nerve-wracking and scary. You see those 2 dots on that INSTI test, and you're like, how the hell am I going to have this conversation with this person that just walked in that, wanted to either learn about their status or get a gift card? So it's been a process, but I've gotten to a point where, if someone diagnoses as positive, I keep moving. It's like, okay, after you are done sobbing, we have to, we have to figure some things out. And I really enjoy, what I do. And I really enjoy working with you all. I remember coming in on Daniel's first HIV test and, sitting there and Daniel's like, okay, it's negative. And then, the client goes back downstairs and Daniel kind of sits back in the chair. I'm like, you good, sis? And he's like, if it was positive, I just don't know what I would have done. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that's part of it. So if you guys don't mind, I actually want to start with Daniel. Tell us, how did you kind of navigate spaces when you learned about what HIV was, and how did you further educate yourself, and where did it come from? Like, where did the education come from?
So, unfortunately, my first experience with HIV was a friend of mine. I was a baby, 7 or 8 years old, and I would visit my sister in San Francisco, and she would introduce me to a lot of her friends. And there was this one particular friend that she introduced me to that I got really close to over the years. And so every time that I would go, we would see him and whatnot. And he landed up dying from an AIDS-related illness. He landed up getting cancer. And it was the first time that I had ever seen someone literally deteriorate. My last visit, things were good. My next visit, like almost a year later, it was like just not the person that I remembered. And my sister she talked me through what it was without really sharing what it was. And I didn't find out until years later what it really was, what really was going on.
Yeah.
But I started to really get into wanting to know what HIV was, how you can contract it, and things when I got it in high school. Because I was living life, and everybody was like, "Oh, you should go get an HIV test," and I was like, "For what? What do I need that for?" And I actually started volunteering for a group that dealt with children who had HIV, either through sexual assault or they were born with it. And volunteering in that particular space was very eye-opening. It was a lot of education. It was unfortunately, a lot of tears. Obviously, some of the individuals that were in that group didn't necessarily make it, to be older. But thankfully, a lot of them did with the right medications and the right treatments. And so I think that has been the basis of just me wanting to. I've always been someone that I like to know things. Like, I like to do research, I like to read, I like to study. And so the topic of HIV, the topic of, talking about AIDS, and just where we have come from, like the 70s and 80s to now, is a huge, huge jump, even though we still feel in the field that we have so far to go. It really, those two experiences, that experience as a kid, and then of course the volunteer years that I did in high school, it really just gave me a heart to understand what I didn't know and what I don't live. I'm not HIV positive. That is not my experience. But to know that the life I was living at the time, and even, sometimes now the life I live now, that it could be me. And it doesn't, I think the biggest thing that I learned was that, like many things, like many illnesses, and it doesn't have a look. It doesn't have, criteria as to, oh, I'm going to pick this person over the person. It just is. And you could be the biggest whore, or you could be a saint, and it's your first time breaking your virginity, and it happened to you. And so I think those experiences really pushed me to really understand more about it, and to want to be involved. And here I am now working in an HIV prevention field. And that was a well of information that, I gained over this past, almost a year and a half, almost 2 years. Now, geez. Okay, yeah, almost 2 years, a year and a half. It'll be 2 years in July. But yeah, that I've just always been an individual that when I'm in something and it means a lot to me, I want to know as much as I can about it, because I don't want to be ignorant, and I don't want to be that person I would never want to be that person to, if I had to give a positive result as a prevention training
Yeah.
specialist, I don't want to be the person that messes up. I almost said something else that we can't say on good TV. I don't want to be the one that messes up that person's experience of even putting out there positive, because we have heard some horrific
We have.
positive stories, you know,
We have.
where it's just like, oh, you're positive, okay, go get your ticket, and you know, we're gonna
Yeah.
give you a whole bunch of
No, we
like
absolutely
pause.
working in the field, we absolutely have heard some horrific, diagnosis stories. Rogelio, I want to get your experience. What was your first experience like learning about HIV, and how did you use the information that you obtained in that moment to navigate the rest of the rest of your life?
Right, for sure. So I actually was recently thinking about this in preparation for the show and was thinking like, when was the first time I even heard about HIV, enough? Because I feel like, I grew up in the generation after, therapies for
Mm.
HIV had already been created. So it's completely outside of my realm of understanding. My generation just doesn't have that same, fear instilled in us about HIV, which, is starting to catch up with us because specifically like queer black and brown young men are, I'm approaching the age where we're seeing like the biggest spikes of new HIV cases in that group. So it's very, present now, but growing up, you always just heard it as a joke, like, oh, you're going to get AIDS, you're going to get HIV. And it was like always associated specifically with gay people, with queer people.
Hmm.
And the first time that I actually heard it talked about more was in depth was actually on Degrassi. If you guys watched that growing up. And it happened when Paige, one of the main characters, starts dating
Hmm.
an HIV positive boy, Griffin. Griffin, I think his name was. And then it becomes like a huge deal because then like one of the roommates was like, "Oh, can we even like drink out of the same juice carton?" Which in COVID times we wouldn't. Now we understand why that's gross. But like back
Right.
then, it was huge to understand like, oh, like you can't get HIV from just mouth to mouth contact, and it was such a huge deal like hearing me. So I was like really lucky to have that exposure to that kind of stuff, to have sisters who were like open-minded enough to even let me watch that show to begin with. um
Yeah.
You
and
mean to tell
then
me you can't get HIV by blowing the candles out on a birthday cake? What?
right.
No,
It's
but
not
you
in the
can
air.
get
You
COVID.
can get COVID.
Right, that part. But and then I didn't really get more into it until college when I did an internship actually at Columbia University in New York. And I worked with their HIV clinical research department. And they were doing a show or a study, which actually ties into Swab and Chill, because they were sending people at home HIV tests to see if getting to use them with their partners would be effective in reducing the spread of HIV. So it was really interesting to do that, but especially to work with like a lot of elders in the field. I was working with a scientist who was like, an elderly man, definitely in his 60s or 70s, who was gay. We went to the Folsom Street Fair in New York together. So it was
Ooh.
definitely a lot for like how old was I then? Like 19-year-old, queer person who had not been exposed to a lot yet.
Yeah.
And then when I wound up working at APLA, this has really opened my mind even more. Uh, Actually, like, funny enough, right a month into working at APLA, I actually went on a date with an older person. And, like,
Mm.
I brought up HIV and AIDS because I told him I was working in the field. And then I just kind of saw him kind of choke up and get somber and not say anything. So I feel like that was
Mm.
kind of a reminder that, like, wow, there's such a generational divide, because I can just say it like willy nilly, oh yeah, the HIV/AIDS crisis, without
Yeah.
having any sort of personal connection to it. So that's why I think it's super important for people of my generation to really, pay homage to that history there, because we lost an entire generation of queer people. And, we
Absolutely.
often focus on gay men, but, a number of trans people who weren't even allowed in a lot of those gay wards were also
Hmm.
lost to HIV. A lot of other just poor people that didn't have access to medical care just died of HIV.
Hmm.
So I think the other thing that I really was interested about HIV with is that it's also a disease that has from the beginning affected marginalized communities. There are the 4 H's. It was always more common in immigrant communities, in the Black
Hmm.
community, and poor communities, and in the queer community. So I think that it's a super, you know, fascinating in a way, in my nerdy way of seeing how, it tracks so easily with social science as a disease.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, yeah, that
Yeah.
was kind of long-winded, but
No. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I mean,
Honestly,
it's a
when you talked
long-winded
about,
question, so good.
right.
yeah, it is. When you talked about the gentleman that got kind of somber on your date, Kai and I did a intergenerational conversation where, HIV was the ending topic, and you could see the older people in the room kind of get really, really somber just based off of the fact that, we've come a very long way, and before then there weren't a lot of resources. And a lot of people lost a lot of people, which brings me, Kai, your answer to the question. So when did you come across knowledge? When did you gain knowledge for HIV? And then also, how did you apply that to your life moving forward?
Yeah, so I will say probably on the group, recognizing, calling myself out, I probably grew up with the most privilege. So my father working in the medical field, medical information was always readily available in my household. Always, 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 always. My dad being a single dad with a son who he thought the girls loved and was always hanging around girls. So obviously that means I was having sex with them. Spoke with me very, very early on about sex. So I remember my 13th birthday, my dad gave me a box of condoms.
Yeah.
Like that was the gift for my 13th birthday, was a box of condoms. But it was always in the sense of sex leading to pregnancy. So I had basically no information about STIs. The condoms were there because it was like, I don't want to get somebody pregnant. Not so much, I don't want to, get a sexually transmitted disease. And then, with school, I went to really, really affluent schools. So a lot of the education, even like the health education, was a little bit more kind of edgy, or I want to say fashion forward, a little bit more up to date with it. So we were getting, our sex, our sex ed videos were from they were like modern day sex education videos. So because my school had money for it, so I had an idea of what HIV was, and that was it. And with a lot of that is, they give you like, this is HIV, it's bad, don't get it.
Right.
Okay, bye. And then when I was in college and living in Arizona, I actually, and it's so amazing to me that I never even thought about it. Yearly, they have a fashion show from the Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation called Moda X. The dance companies I were in, we performed in it every single year. So for 5 years, I was performing in a fashion show where all the fundraisers went to the Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation. And I still knew nothing about HIV. Just nothing. It was so easy for me to just, this is a performance, this is the show. Yes, we're having fun. Look at all the gay people. Okay, I'm out. It wasn't literally until I interviewed for APLA that I knew anything about HIV, really, like really, really knew about it. And that's,
you didn't tell them that.
So Terry, so if you guys don't know who our bosses are, Terry and Dante, super, super amazing. They made me read over 100 pages of HIV.
They sure did.
And said, you can know this by your next interview, which was 2 days later. So
they sure did.
I went home, or I went back to my other job at the time, and I printed up those 130 something pages, put it in a binder, and I read it in 2 days. And then I was like, oh, I know HIV. They never tested me, but it was not until then that I knew anything about HIV. And then working in the field really, really was my education. And I think, especially for me too, my degree in psychology with the focus in sexual health was always in sexual deviance. So it was about like sexual misconduct, but we rarely talk about HIV. So it's one of those things, we don't talk about it enough. And so that was my education, was working in the field.
Yeah. It's funny, when you bring up the binder, I remember you walking around on your first couple of days with the binder in your hand, and you're like, if anybody wants to read this, they can. I've already read it. But shout out to Dante and Terry for, being in the field. You kind of want to make sure that not only are you giving the correct information, you kind of know what you're talking about. And Dante and Terry put us in a position where we do go over data. I hate reading data. We do go over data and the charts and the state reports and stuff like that to make sure that we are out in the field giving the correct information and not just saying HIV is bad, don't get it. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that. So that leads us to our, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I also appreciate at APLA that they've also taken the time to educate us on like the personal effects too, because we watched that documentary. They've also talked personally about what it was like growing up, or not, coming up at that time at the height of the crisis. So I think getting that firsthand experience from like the elders in our community, is super, super valuable also.
I actually
That
cried
documentary
on,
that they made us watch.
I cried
about the
on Daniel's
hospital.
shoulder.
Look,
I was literally on Daniel's shoulder just boo-hoo crying.
I was like 1 month into
Terry,
APLA, like, oh.
Terry was like, "This is important. We're gonna watch this." And
Yes.
then wanted to have thoughts. I want to know your thoughts. I don't have thoughts. I have tears.
Yeah,
Right, I'm still trying to collect myself right now.
Right.
Give
I have
me a
tears. I
moment,
have used
sir.
tissues.
Allow me to process.
I
That
think
is hilarious.
one of the things that has been the most eye-opening with sexual health and HIV, you can understand the virus. The virus you can learn. That is, it's in books, it's available. But what's really important is learning the people who have it. Taking the time to really see the humanity in it all. HIV, yes, it's a really, really devastating virus if it's not controlled or taken care of. But there's so much more to it. How are you expected to take your HIV medication if you're homeless? How are you expected to take HIV medication if you're a victim of sexual assault, or if you have mental health issues, or just don't trust medicine? So
Or
for
just
me,
don't care about yourself enough, because that's also a huge problem in our community.
That's a thing too, yeah.
And so for me, HIV is more than just the virus. And I think that's the only way that we can beat the virus and get rid of it and eliminate it, is to recognize there's so much more. We say it in Healthy Him all the time. It's a holistic approach, but it genuinely is. We can't end HIV until we address the person before we address the virus. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of sexual health going, is addressing the people, as opposed to just your symptom. You don't come in and you don't want someone just to think of you as an HIV diagnosis. No, you're more than that. There's so many other things. Let me help the person, and then the diagnosis and everything that comes along with it will be addressed at that time too. So that's something that
I think that's an approach, just in medicine, period, with anything. When we look at mental illness, when we look at anything, it really should be a client-centered approach to the fact that, I'm not looking at you as a number. I'm not looking at you as data. I'm looking at you as a human being who is navigating this and having to deal with that. Because it's especially in this industry, like you all know, we've talked to people where they literally look at clients and all they see is zeros and ones. All they see is, okay, this is going to be for this quota, or this is going to go on this, that, you're going to help me fix this report. And, oh, yes, these numbers, this person is going to help me make this number look bigger. It's like, okay, you do know that's a human being. Like, they're breathing and living in front of you. They are not a number. They are not, without emotion and without soul.
Agreed, yeah.
They are a human being, a living, breathing human being.
And that's very, very real. So if you are watching this, remember that is not a number. You can't lump all people together either. And it doesn't have a look. We're about to go into our second commercial, and then I have more questions. So stay tuned.
Love questions.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm a him. And you probably clicked this video because you're wondering about the U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. These two letters have changed the game for people living with HIV. Oftentimes, people have been afraid of disclosing their status, being intimate, or having been stigmatized for being positive. It's unfair. No one should feel uncomfortable about these things. That's where U equals U comes into play. If you are positive, have been virally suppressed for at least 6 months, and taking your medication, then guess what? The transmission is impossible. Yes, impossible. If you don't believe me, you can ask the Center for Disease Control. They will back this up and have been since 2017 with hundreds of experts and organizations. Now, what does that mean to be virally suppressed? It means that you have 50 or less copies of the HIV virus per milliliter of blood. Now, I know it's hard to imagine, but that's a tiny amount. Taking your HIV medication daily, without fail, most people are able to become undetectable within 1 to 6 months. Now, we wish we could say everyone is able to reach U equals U status, but we know that sometimes it is harder for other people for different reasons. However, for the majority that do reach undetectable and continue to take their medication daily, there are no risks for transmission. Of course, we encourage safe sex practices because there are other STIs that can be transmitted, but HIV won't be one of them. If you have any other questions or concerns, you can contact us here. Thank you guys for watching.
And that was Daryl,
Honey, Daryl
aka
better come
Jasper
through.
Dupree, right? Our
Yes, he
favorite
better come
rapper, pew
through.
pew 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 pew, pew 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 pew. Giving you a quick lesson on U equals U, which is undetectable equals untransmittable, where transmission of the virus is impossible if a viral load is under, I think it's 260 milliliters of blood, but we'll get into that in another video. I couldn't end today without talking about stigma. And Joseph in the comments brought up stigmas associated with HIV. So my question to my amazing co-host wearing red, what are you doing to battle stigma towards HIV positive individuals, and how important is it that we challenge those stigmas? So I'm going to start with Kai this time.
Ooh, I love this. I am quick. If the moment I hear anything that's HIV stigma related, I'm quick to turn around and correct because it's just wrong. There's nothing about it. It doesn't come from a place of fact. So for me, I don't care who it is, my dad, my grandma, my friends, whatever. If you say one thing that's stigmatizing towards, I mean, anything really, because I don't play that. But especially when it comes to HIV, it's because the stigma is based out of ignorance. And it's like, no, let's just educate you real quick, just so you know, because I'm tired. As you guys were saying earlier, like, it's not from spit. I'm not going to get it from kissing somebody. I mean, unless there's a lot of blood in your mouth. I'm not handshake, things like that. These are human beings. And so often we equate the gay experience or just human lives to a virus that, you know, they have no control over it. And then we go out of our way to also make people feel bad. Sex is great. We love sex. There should be nothing wrong with sex. But the moment you start stigmatizing someone for HIV, you instantly take away that humanity apart. You shame them. You're like, what's the point? Yes, it's sex. Yes, they got HIV. That's not all. There's so much more to it. So for me, don't do stigma around me because I have a lot to say always. And I won't do it.
I've actually seen you in action when it comes to that too. Kai don't play. Kai, as soon as you say something, Kai, what? Kai is real quick. Rogelio, what about you? What are you doing to challenge those stigmas towards HIV?
For sure. I think sex positivity is just like a huge part of it, I think, because like Kai was saying, there's so much stigma associated with HIV and other STIs and STDs in general, just because of this association with sex. You know, we get the common cold, we get the flu, we get a number of other things that are transmitted, you know, in similar ways by close contact with people. Yet we have decided that these diseases, this group of diseases, is somehow dirtier or grosser just because it's passed through sex. And that's literally the only reason why. So I think that just battling with that, you know, to be more sex positive and be like, you know, well, STDs happen, STIs happen. You know, they're a part of a lot of people's lives, especially people who are, you know, very sexually active, which is very common in the community. So, and there's no problem with that. So, like, I think it's all about having those conversations, because a lot of people do not seek care, do not, you know, go the extra effort to, you know, get into safer sex information to begin with, because of the whole stigma associated with it. So I think sex positivity is a huge part of it. And overall, just correcting ignorance whenever you hear it. Because, you know, like we've been saying, spit is not a way to pass HIV. There are a number of other misconceptions about HIV, and I think if we just normalize it and just, you know, look at this as like, you know, well, some people just get it and some people don't. And the fact that we've advanced so much as a society, you know, has made it so much less important, even if, you know, somebody is positive. So I think that we really just have to make that effort to have these conversations and move on.
Agreed. What about you, Daniel? What are you doing to challenge those stigmas towards HIV positive individuals?
Well, first and foremost, I think that everybody needs to go and pick up a movie called Kids and watch that. It stars a very young, very teen Miss Rosario Dawson. But it talks. There's a portion in that movie that deals with HIV. What do? I am a walking billboard as it pertains to information. I believe in checking stigma when and where it happens. I'm with Kai. I don't do stigma well. You will get checked, and depending on how you express the stigma is going to determine how I check you.
Period.
Period. But I think at the end of the day, one of Healthy Kim has a slogan that it's a lifestyle, and it really is. It really is a lifestyle. When you are concerned about community, when you are concerned about what happens to those in your community, whether it's your ethnic community, your racial community, your socioeconomic community, your literal community that you live in, everything that you do and kind of everything that you are, for me, becomes part of that process. And so educating people who are ignorant, really having uncomfortable conversations with my friends who don't have these conversations on a regular basis. I have a lot of straight cisgender friends. This is nowhere in their gamut of thought. Like it's not something that they wake up every day and say, oh, I'm going to talk about PrEP, or oh, I'm going to talk about getting an HIV test. And me being in the field, also with me being part of the LGBTQIA community, we talk about sex all the time. Whether it's just for fun, kicks and giggles, or whether it's in, a public health fashion, we talk about sex a lot. It's part of
it's the truth.
It's part of the tea time, okay, that we have.
That's what we do.
And so I try to bring those conversations to friends and my family that don't think about it. I think one of the biggest things that I can do to fight stigma as it pertains to HIV is to also fight stigma for things that people readily recognize and don't have issues with, and make a correlation. Because there's a lot of people out here walking around with chlamydia, syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, which is not curable. And it seems like those things, even though still not really talked about, they're still a little more socially accepted. But when it's HIV, it's like, oh, it's the kiss of death, and I'm like, no, it's not. So,
I think that you made a really good point with those being socially accepted. I'll say this very, very briefly, and I'm gonna do the granny finger. HIV is not a moral disease. The government failed us by making it a moral disease. Anyone can get HIV, regardless of what you look like, what you do, the circles that you hang around, and how you sex. It does not matter. Anyone can get HIV. I do believe that the stigma behind that came from people trying to put this in a unmoral box or immoral box, and saying that the gays are getting HIV because they're not living according to God's word. We are in 2020. All of that is BS. So when you see someone or have a conversation with someone who's HIV positive, give them the respect that they deserve, because they're fighting every day just like you are. And I actually noticed that a lot of people who don't know their status don't take care of themselves nearly as much as anyone that is HIV positive. If you are seeing a physician once a month for your HIV, you are definitely putting the rest of your health first. And if you are not seeing your physician at all, then you are putting your health last. So where's the contrast? So that's what really irritates me. I had a conversation about that at a Thanksgiving table one day, and it got me yelling. So we are out of time, because we can talk about this all day. We can talk about, y'all know how I am. We can talk about this all day. Okay, drops mic. We are out of time. This has been a great show with you all. Thank you all for coming on with your red. I want to say, we all can say one thing before we go. I want to say, if you are struggling with HIV, please hit us up. Let us link you back into care. You have a team full of dedicated people who really care about you and want to see you succeed and thrive with your HIV status. And happy World AIDS Day. Daniel?
Definitely get involved in your own sexual health. Know that, get tested, support those that may be living with it. And in honor of World AIDS Day, I just send love and honor and homage to all of those that we have lost. But also I give hope to all of the success and all of the advancement that we still can gain to get this epidemic down to zero.
Yes. What about you, Miss Red Pop Star up there with the beret? Mr. Kai.
Looking like a London pop star. Don't he look like a British pop star? Yes.
So for me, especially today's a big day of thanks for me. And it's for everyone who has taught me something about HIV, and especially for you three, for everything that we do, because I know what we do really does make a difference. And I know sometimes it's really, really hard, and it really, really is. Some days are harder than other days. Some days really, really are harder than other days. But each of you do something so amazing. Daniel with the Swab and Chill. If everyone doesn't know, Daniel is Swab and Chill. Daniel is Swab and Chill. Rogelio, just with Rogelio being here for the last year and a half, being able to have Rogelio on my team and then seeing all the amazing things Rogelio's doing on Trans Connections, it's important. Tied with everything that you do for linkage, getting people linked back into care, it's important. So for me, I'm thankful for you three for being important and making a difference in the HIV community. So yeah.
Thank you for doing the same. Rogelio?
I think it's super important just to know our history, especially for a lot of the younger people out there who may not feel as directly connected to HIV or AIDS. And I think it's also just super important that we continue fighting inequality in all forms, because at the end of the day, the HIV epidemic continues in certain communities because other things like racism, like classism, like homophobia continue. So if we were to fix all of those, then, we'd make a huge dent in the HIV AIDS epidemic. So I think it's just, think of these problems all as complex and intersecting, and know your history.
Yes. And with that, it has been World AIDS Day 2020. Go get an HIV test and go check out the linkup.apla.tumblr if you are HIV positive looking to link into care. I love you all. Thank y'all. Congratulations. This is a great episode.
Everyone.
Loved it.
Great job, Ty.
Yeah.